All right, this interview with Vanessa has got to be the most value-packed, condensed interview I have ever done. Truly, in like 20 minutes time, we're able to pack in how to make your videos in such a way that you come across as professionally competent, to make sure that when people watch your videos, they see you as someone who's personally likable. How do you come across without saying anything directly that you are morally trustworthy? All of these assessments that people make non-verbally as they're watching a video, all these things that you're hoping people come away thinking about you, turns out it isn't just off to random chance. Vanessa has figured out actually what's going on that's making people make those snap judgments, and you can actually control and influence that in the way you make your video. So absolutely incredible. I mean, there's more than that that we get to, but that's just like a sample of what we talk about in this interview. So you're definitely going to enjoy it, for a couple of reasons, partially because of the poor internet connection here at the house, but also because I was still getting over some eye issues and my health problems at the time. We went ahead and kept the cameras turned off for this interview, but you'll still have different images and graphics and stuff on the screen to kind of keep you occupied. But mostly enjoy this conversation, enjoy Vanessa's knowledge, and go check out Vanessa's work when you're done listening to this. All right, good morning, Vanessa. Thanks so much for joining us. For all you listening to this, Vanessa is the best-selling author of the book Captivate. This book had a serious impact on my professional life, my personal life, and honestly, I can point to a lot of changes that have happened in my world in the last 12 months, a lot of which are because of the skills that I learned through reading and rereading Captivate. So, awesome book, been translated into 16 languages. They've got like 30 million views on the YouTube channel. If you haven't yet heard of the book Captivate or checked out her website, scienceofpeople.com, you definitely want to check that out. So, Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on with us.
Oh my goodness, thanks so much for having me.
So, your area of expertise is, as described in the book Captivate, right? How to make yourself more likable, how to build better relationships, how to be more memorable, ultimately, just the people skills that none of us ever get taught.
Mhm.
And in the context of video, I have noticed that there's a real difference between some videos that really catch people's attention and that really leave you feeling great after watching the video, right? And it gives you great positive impressions of the person on the other end of the camera. And there's also a lot of videos you watch that are maybe a little painful to watch, maybe a little awkward, or maybe just leave you feeling a little unsettled and not necessarily, trusting the recipient on the other end. And I've seen these videos and I've given people some basic advice, but honestly, I think that the information that you would have for us that could really help us here on the Ngari channel is just talking about what those factors really are that determine how we like someone on camera and how we determine who we like, who we don't like, who we trust, who we don't trust, right? How do you, what goes into, recording a video that's going to give people good vibes when they watch it versus recording a video that'll not accomplish that. So there's four particular areas I think I want to look at here. The first one would be competence. When somebody watches your video, how are they going to gauge in their gut, right, in their unconscious mind, how are they determining who they think is competent and who they think doesn't know what they're talking about?
Mhm. Yeah, you picked up on something that I think is subconsciously happening for everyone all the time. And it's even more pronounced on video because video is in a weird way asynchronous. Like even if you're on video at the same time with someone else, you're speaking, they're waiting their turn, and then it's their turn to speak. It's a little bit different than in person. And then if someone's watching your video, that really happens asynchronously. And what you're talking about is something that's called thin slicing. So researchers at Tufts University, her name is Nalini Ambady, who heads up this research, she discovered that we are constantly making these thin slices of people. It's sort of a fancy word for a first impression, but it's a little bit faster than a first impression. It's literally a snapshot of someone. And we create these thin slices in the first few seconds of seeing someone. And it usually has very little to do with the words someone is using. And we actually make all these judgments about people simply by the way they're holding themselves, the shape of their face, the tone of their voice, how they move their head, these very, very small micro movements. And the reason for that is because we like to think that we're good at hiding our emotions, but actually our confidence, our deception, our competence, our trustworthiness, they leak out in all kinds of interesting ways in the body and on the face. And so when you're thinking about making a good first impression, what you're actually thinking about is how can I very quickly show someone they can trust me, they should like me, and I'm on their side. And the first one that you mentioned there is competence. So competence actually comes from congruence. That's kind of a weird way to think about competence, but here's what I want you to think about on video. When someone is trying to judge, does this person know what they're talking about? They're looking for alignment between verbal and nonverbal. And so in some of our research, we've researched TED speakers, and I wanted to know if there were patterns between the most viewed TED Talks and the least viewed TED Talks. Why is it that some TED Talks go viral and others don't? And one thing that we found in this research is that we analyzed thousands of hours of TED Talks. The most popular TED speakers do a very particular, what I would call competence cue. They speak to you with their hands as well as their words. So when they say they have 3 things they want to tell you, they hold up 3 fingers. When they say they want to talk to you about a big idea, they hold their hands like they're holding a big, heavy ball. When they want to talk to you about something from the heart, they literally gesture towards their heart region. I think that what we're looking for, the signal of competence, is showing what you are saying or saying what you mean with your hands.
That's interesting. I think I'd heard some of that information. Also, I probably read it in one of your blog posts or books about TED Costs. So that's interesting. So that can relate competence, having that match between the nonverbal and the verbal
Mm-hmm.
communication.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine, right, part of competence as well is just speaking in a confident manner. Any tips on how to make your speech sound more confident to the listener, other than, using body language and gestures to match your words?
Okay, so definitely, definitely. There is, when we think about nonverbal, we often forget about the power of our vocal power or our voice tone. When we think about nonverbal, we're actually talking about body language, facial expressions, and voice. And confidence cues are very, very powerful in the voice. And the reason for this is because I'll do a little demo for you if you'd like to hear it. So right now, I am working very hard to keep my voice in its lowest natural register. Now, everyone has, I think it's about 12 notes. They typically they move in comfortably. So this is my lowest comfortable note. If I go any lower, it's uncomfortable for me, right? I can do it, but it's not comfortable. On the higher end, I can go all the way up here. And this is how I talk to my daughter. This is how I talk to my husband. This is how I talk to my dogs.
Yeah.
And this is also very comfortable for me, but you wouldn't want to hear it. I also can go higher, but it's not natural.
Yeah.
So it's actually, the first thing is to know your 12 notes. And then when it comes to confidence, we like to hear people in the lowest end of their natural register. So the biggest mistake that people make is in the first second of their video, they take a deep breath in and they say hello up here. So it sounds like this. Hello. And they
Yeah.
do it accidentally in the highest end of their register. What I would prefer you to do is actually do it on the out breath. So instead of taking in a breath and holding it in, take a deep breath and on the out breath, say hello. So listen to the difference. This is on, first I'll do the wrong way and then I'll do the right way. So hello versus hello. Those are
Yeah.
both in my natural register, but they sound completely different, completely different. So what I want you to think about is, what are your 12 notes? And I have a video tutorial on this on my YouTube channel. I think it's called Speaking with Vocal Power or Maximum Resonance Point. What I'm trying to get you to speak at is your maximum resonance point. It's where you have the most volume, space, that deep, beautiful resonant sound that we like to hear. That is a signal of confidence.
Perfect. Oh, I love that. And I love how I think I've observed that myself. And, as a sales guy, right, I always have to be careful of, my tone. But I don't think I'd ever quite labeled it as being as simple as it is, whereas, you just got to be in your lower level of your natural register.
And I have a whole bunch of like vocal warm-ups. Like for example, before I got on this podcast, and if you want, we can do it. I did a vocal warm-up. And that also really helps you create volume and breath and speak in your lower range. And so it's like a 2-minute thing that I quickly do. I can do it with you if you'd like. And it really helps if you're about to get on a video call or you're about to do a video. Even just doing 30 seconds of it dramatically changes your vocal power.
Well, I'll link to that because I do think people are going to want to check that out. Is that like a YouTube video or something you have?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, no, I'll make sure I link to that then. All right, so another one which I think will be related to this is trustworthiness. And in this version, it's not just trustworthiness that you are capable, but trustworthiness that you are, morally trustworthy and you have their best interests at heart, right? They can trust your character. How in, a 2-minute video can you give someone those vibes that they feel like, hey, I can trust this person, they got my best interests at heart?
So with this one, it's very simple. You are trying to produce oxytocin with the other person. So oxytocin, very simplified, it's actually quite a complicated little chemical, but very simplified, it's the chemical of connection. When you feel oxytocin, you feel the warm and fuzzies. It's like when you get on a call with someone or you just saw someone, you went, really like that person, that kind of warm and fuzzy feeling. That's actually oxytocin. And oxytocin is really, really important for connecting with people. So when you're in person, I love to have oxytocin with a handshake, with a hug, with a high five, with touch. On video, your next best thing is eye contact. And they've actually proven that you can produce oxytocin even through a webcam. And that was like the best study I've ever read. I was like, thank
Yeah.
goodness. So when you first log on, it's making sure that you immediately are looking at the dot, like the little camera dot,
Yep.
not your face, not even their face, the dot. That's
Yep.
actually what produces the oxytocin.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then without going into too much detail, what kind of ratio of eye contact should they be making, or I guess, dot camera contact should they be making during a video?
So I try, and I don't actually have the science on this. I don't think anyone's done science on it yet. Is what I try to do is while I am talking, I try to look at the camera because I don't need to look anywhere else. I don't need to, be looking off into the sunset or looking at my notes. I try really hard to memorize as much of my notes as possible. So while I'm talking, I'm trying to look at the camera. While they are talking, I try to bounce between the camera and their face. So I'm also able to look at their hand gestures, look at their facial expressions.
Cool. All right, I like that. All right, next level of, these nonverbals. So you've gotten them to feel like you're professionally competent. You got them to feel like you are morally trustworthy. I would say another important ingredient to people really connecting with your videos is after they watch your videos, they should feel like you're the type of person they'd get along with, like they'd want to go sit down and have a beer with, right? Even just outside of
Mm-hmm.
the professional business with you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're doing professional videos, right? Whether it's Zoom or a video email or a video on LinkedIn or something. How do you give people that feeling that, you're a likable person even outside your professional role when you're on camera?
So I think that what you want to do is create as many Me Too moments as possible. And what I mean by this is it's very hard on a video call when you're sharing something or you're teaching something and you're literally teaching at nothing, right? You're
Yeah.
teaching at a screen or a black dot. And so that can feel very lonely. I think there are times when I'm teaching a webinar to thousands of my students. I mean, literally, we have thousands of people go on these webinars, but I can't see anyone. It's just me, pitching into a dark void. What's really important is to try to create as many Me Too moments as possible. So in that time, what I'll often say when I'm teaching is this resonating with you? Pop in a chat, tell me so. And then I'll look in the chat and just to see the plus ones, the smiley faces, the yes, me too. I also do a thing on my office hours for some of my courses where I have everyone unmute themselves to say hi. So I say, hey, everyone unmute, say hi. Hi, 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 hi. Thank you. At the end, I'll say, hey, everyone unmute and let's give a round of applause to someone who just presented. So also creating these very small moments on video, whether that's asking for feedback or having people unmute at the same time, those are all moments that you're creating where everyone is doing the same thing at the same time.
Would you say that having imperfections in your videos, right? Cat walks through the background, your camera quality isn't great, you cough during what you're saying. Do you think some of those imperfections and moments of realism, do you think those can create those needed Me Too moments?
I think that they can if you choose to make them so. Like having your kid run in the middle of a presentation, you can handle that one of two ways. One is you can be excruciatingly embarrassed and laugh about it and be like, I'm sure we've all been there. Thank you for your patience. Honey, could you please go find daddy? Right? Like you can absolutely do that. Or you can be horrified and yell at your child and try to ignore them and hope that no one else notices. I tend to be of the mindset of like, okay, like that happens to everyone. Let's just honor it. Like, let's just go with it. So you are in control of how that can come across.
Because I've had videos of mine where I made mistakes in the middle of them. I've had video emails that I sent where literally halfway through I said, hang on, I knew there's a third thing. I'm sorry, it's a Friday afternoon. I'm just losing it here. Oh, that's right. Here's the third thing. And I'll do that, and that'll get the best reaction of any of them. They'll go, "Oh my goodness, that's amazing! That happens to me all the time. I'm right there with you, man. Let's talk Monday." And that
Totally.
creates that moment of that me too, right? Like, hey, this person's just like I am.
Yes. And by the way, I think that the science is with us on that. Like the science proves that we actually like people who make mistakes and own up to them. And they've done this in a variety of unique ways. They've had two actresses try to sell a blender. I'm sorry, the same actress try to sell a blender. And in one version, she has the perfect pitch, flawless, amazingly delivered. And the other pitch, she spills the smoothie all over the table. And guess who sold more blenders? The same actress who made the mistake. So I think that we strive for perfection. We strive for the perfect video with the perfect lighting and the perfect pitch and the perfect script. And I nailed every single point. And I actually think that when it comes to building rapport with people, that's not what they want because it's not real.
Beautiful. Another one, and I think this is a little bit outside the other three, right? So if we come down to like, being likable in a variety of different ways. The other thing I've noticed is that when I'm consuming content, whether it's an audiobook I'm listening to, podcast I'm listening to, or a YouTube video that I'm watching, there is some content that really has me on the edge of my seat, where I'm just like listening to every single word. And there's some content that I just tend to like space out in. So how do you capture that intrigue? How do you get people pulled into your message to the point where they can't wait for you to finish your video versus getting disinterested halfway through?
Yeah. Well, remember that we're talking about two ways to capture attention. There always is two ways. One is you have frickin' amazing, amazing content, right? Like you have to have some kernel of engaging content there. On the other end, you also have to present in a very, very engaging way. Like, for example, there have definitely been times where I can't sleep at night because I'm anxious about social distancing or coronavirus or whatever it is. And I turn on the television and I watch an infomercial. And I literally sit for 30 minutes and watch how I watch about the latest technology in cat litter boxes. And I don't own a cat. That is someone who is selling something with incredibly engaging presentation skills. And so I think that if you can have both, that's magic. That's
Yeah.
where magic happens. So I would say there's two angles of this. One, if you don't have amazing content, start there. Let's assume, though, that you have amazing, amazing content. The second thing that you want to do is learn two very basic presentation skills. And I actually think there's a couple different presentation skills that I teach in some of my courses, but the two that are most relevant for us is one, mode switching, and two, storytelling. Those are two distinct presentation skills. So first, mode switching. The human brain cannot pay attention for very long. We are like hungry toddlers. If we don't have a mode switch, and that can happen a lot of different ways. That could be shifting from joke to story. That could be going from slides to video. That could be doing a graphic on your video. That could be having a floating bullet on your video. That could even be a hand gesture to reading. So what I like to think about is how many mode switches can I do naturally without making it look like it's a vaudeville show? How many mode switches can I do to keep people's hungry toddlers in check?
That's
The
awesome.
second the second thing that I mentioned is storytelling, and I won't beat this one home because I think that we all are like, yeah, we know. Stories just captivate the imagination in a totally different way. If I were to say once upon a time, it literally triggers a different part of your brain than if I were to say, hey, I learned this thing. It's literally just a different part of our brain. And so the more that you can incorporate storytelling into your presentation skills, the better. I try in my videos, you'll notice I try to have a mode switch every 30 seconds, and I try to have a story at least every 3 minutes.
That's cool. No, I love that. All right. Final question that you can answer as briefly as you're able would be any tips for how to appear calm, confident, collected on the surface when underneath you're just a bundle of nerves.
Yeah. I have I absolutely struggle with social anxiety. For those of you who know my work, I'm a recovering awkward person. I also experience stage fright. And so I've absolutely had to work with this issue very personally. I think that most people assume that I'm an extrovert, but actually I'm an adventurous ambivert. I have to try to push myself out of my comfort zone. And the way that I have learned to do this is with a really powerful study that looked at nervousness and excitement. And basically, what they figured out is that nervousness and excitement are really close sister emotions. When you're nervous or anxious, your heart races, you have butterflies, you sweat, you get dry mouth. When you're really excited, think about, asking your partner to marry you or asking your crush out. You sweat, you get butterflies, you're nervous, you have dry mouth. They're very, very similar, but one's a positive stress and one's a negative stress. And so when I'm backstage or when I'm about to hit present on Zoom or when I'm about to click onto a video call or a webinar or a YouTube video, if I'm in the studio and I have that feeling of anxiety, I tell myself, you know what? This is actually excitement. Like, this is creating something good. This is teaching someone something. This is connecting with someone. This is using technology in a unique way. So I would say is the more you can reframe your nerves as excitement, the better it actually serves you.
That's perfect. All right. Well, everyone listening, this is literally just a sample of what Vanessa has to offer in her book, Captivate. I can tell you I read that book 3 times through because there was so much in there. And as amazing as this interview has been, I guarantee you there's way more sitting in that book waiting for you. So, Vanessa, what's the best way for people to engage with you and find your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So Captivate is wherever books are sold, Amazon, Audible. I read the audiobook and do all kinds of funny voices and things like that too, which was a joy. And then, of course, all of my articles and videos are on sciencepeople.com, or you can find me on YouTube.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'll be sure to put links to that in the description as well, so people can very easily find that book and engage with the rest of your content as well. Thanks a ton.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so since there was so much value condensed into such a short amount of time, I came up with a list of 7 key things that were covered in that conversation that you need to work into your next video. So number 1 is using hand gestures, right? This one's easy for me. I literally can't stop talking with my hands. But if you don't actually do it, make sure you include some hand gestures. Next, tone, right? Make sure that you're speaking in the lower range of your octave. That relays confidence and competence. Now, for establishing trust, it's very important that you maintain eye contact, which again means camera lens contact, right? It's okay to look away from time to time, but you don't want to spend the whole video looking down or the whole video looking up, right? You got to keep that eye contact. You can create an environment where people find you more likable and more relatable by giving them me too moments while you're on camera. And sometimes these me too moments can honestly just be mistakes that happen on their own. You don't necessarily have to plan this so much. Now, as far as getting people's and maintaining people's attention, you've got to make sure you include mode switching, right? Mode switching could be differences in the way you talk, but mode switching could also be, things that you do in the video itself as you switch from one screen to the next, or include graphics or stuff of that nature. You also want to include story in your video, and Vanessa has done videos in talking about what ingredients there are to a great story. I would recommend you research something called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. He talks about like a story framework, but basically, as best as I can relay it, to have a good story, you need to lay out what the status quo is, right? What the setting is. Then you need to very quickly give people an idea of 2 potential outcomes that could happen, right? A better way things could go and a worse things could go, or a worse way things could go, and establish the tension between those 2, right? There's a difference between those 2, and there's tension because you're not really sure which way this is going to go, and you know what the stakes are. And then, of course, at the end of the story, there's a resolution, right? So those are basic ingredients of a story, but I definitely recommend you Google, basic ingredients of a story, and you can probably get a better description than I just gave. Final thing is to get yourself appearing confident, calm, and collected on camera, even if you're feeling a bit nervous. One of the key things to do is reframe your mind to see those feelings as excitement rather than as fear or nervousness. So anyways, there is a ton in this interview. Re-listen to it if you need to. I definitely recommend you check out Vanessa's book. I recommend you check out scienceofpeople.com. Subscribe to this channel because there are more interesting conversations like this one coming. And comment below with anything else you'd like to hear us cover or any concerns of yours when it comes to getting comfortable on camera.